There is a story that gets told about the child who never fit. You have probably heard it already. Maybe you have told it about yourself. It goes like this. In every difficult family, there is one member whose nervous system runs a little hotter than everyone else's. They feel more. They notice more. They walk into a room and read the temperature before anyone says a word. And because they feel so much, they become the one who says the thing nobody else will say. So the family turns on them. They get called dramatic, too sensitive, the problem, the one who is always starting something. And the story has a comforting ending. It says that child was never the problem at all. That child was the healthy one, the truth teller, the family's immune system reacting to an infection everyone else had agreed to ignore. And the part worth sitting with is that the research backs a lot of this up. Dr. Elaine Aron spent decades studying what she named sensory processing sensitivity, and she found that somewhere around 15 to 20% of people are simply wired to process the world more deeply, to react more strongly to subtle cues the rest of us filter out. That is real. It is in her 1996 book on the highly sensitive person. The family therapist Murray Bowen gave us the idea of the identified patient. The member a family points to and says, there is the one with the problem, when the problem actually belongs to the whole system. Bowen wrote about this in his clinical work in the 70s, and Alice Miller, in The Drama of the Gifted Child, showed how a child can become exquisitely tuned to a parent's unspoken needs, reading the parent so accurately that the child forgets to develop a self of their own. Even Jung seems to sit inside this story. He wrote, in the 17th volume of his collected works, that children suffer from the unlived life of their parents, that they are forced into fulfilling all the things the parents repressed and kept unconscious. So there it is, a clean, kind, well-sourced explanation. The rejected child sees more because they were born to see more, and the family punished them for it. It is a good story. Pieces of it are true, and if it were the whole truth, this video would be over right now, and you would leave feeling validated and understood. But there is something in that story that does not hold. 3 things, actually. And once you see the first one, you cannot unsee it. Start with the first crack. If the scapegoat is chosen because of who they are, because of a sensitive nervous system they were born with, then the role should be fixed. It should belong to that person for life. But that is not what family therapists actually observe. When the scapegoated child gets healthier, or moves out, or goes no contact and finally leaves the system, the role does not disappear with them. It moves. The family reassigns it, and it often lands on a sibling who never showed a single sign of being the sensitive one. Sometimes it lands on the child who used to be the favorite. Salvador Minuchin and his colleagues documented exactly this kind of symptom transfer in family systems, where the family's dysfunction simply relocates to keep the system in balance. Therefore, the role cannot be a trait. A trait cannot jump to another person. Something else is choosing who carries it. The second crack goes deeper. If this were about a nervous system, about genetics, about being born more perceptive, then it should follow bloodlines. It does not. Scapegoating attaches just as reliably to a child who shares no genes with the family at all, the adopted child, the stepchild who arrived at age 8, the foster placement. Researchers looking at step families and adoptive systems have found the same scapegoating pattern land on children, with no biological or temperamental link to anyone in the household. And the foundational study on this, by Vogel and Bell back in 1960, described the emotionally disturbed child functioning as the family scapegoat without any claim that the child was born different. The child was assigned the role. because the family needed someone to hold it. Therefore, it is not sensitivity in the blood. The system is selecting a container, and biology is not the filter. Which brings us to the third crack, and this is the one that breaks the old story completely. In 1975, 3 researchers, Selma Freyberg, Edna Adelson, and Vivian Shapiro, published a paper with a haunting title, Ghosts in the Nursery. They were studying why a parent's unresolved history seems to reach forward in time and land on one particular child. And what they found was that it was not about the child's temperament. It was about timing. It was about which child happened to arrive at the exact moment a parent's old buried wound was closest to the surface. The ghost does not choose the most sensitive baby. It chooses the baby who was in the room when the haunting started. So, if it is not the nervous system, and it is not the blood, and it is timing that decides, then what exactly is timing deciding? The mechanism is this. A persona, in Jung's language, is the social mask, the boundary between you and the world. In early childhood, that boundary has not finished forming yet, and a family's disowned material, the shadow it has agreed never to look at, does not flow toward the most spiritual child. It flows toward the child whose boundary was still open when the pressure hit. Call it the permeability window. The rejected child does not see the shadow first because they were gifted. They see it first because their window had not closed yet. Some nights the screen is the wrong place for this. If you'd rather just listen, Surreal Mind is on Spotify now. The words, in the dark, wherever you are, links in the description. So let us stay inside this permeability window, because everything else depends on it. Every family runs on a set of agreements, and the ones that hold hardest are the ones nobody ever speaks out loud. We do not talk about why father drinks. We do not mention that mother disappears into herself for days. We do not name the thing that happened before you were born. Jung had a precise way of describing what happens to that unspoken material. Because it is never made conscious, it does not vanish. It goes somewhere. In the 9th volume of his collected works, he wrote a sentence that reads like a diagnosis of the entire pattern. When an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. Read that again with a family in mind. The thing the family will not look at inside itself does not stay inside. It acts itself out, and it needs a place to land. And the comforting version of this story leaves out what comes with it. The paradox of premature sight. The very thing that lets the child see the family's shadow so early, that unclosed boundary, is the same thing that makes it so hard to ever close that boundary again. The gift and the wound are the same thing, seen from 2 sides. Picture a child. We will call her Renata. Ordinary family, ordinary town. Nothing that would make the neighbors look twice. When Renata was about 7, she said something at the dinner table. She looked at her father, who had been quietly refilling his glass all evening, and she asked, in the plain voice children use, why he got sad every night after the 3rd drink. The table went silent, and then Renata got in trouble. Not her father. Her. Because she had not broken a rule about drinking. She had broken the deeper rule, the unspoken one. The rule that said, we do not see this, and we certainly do not say it. Renata's boundary had not finished forming, so the thing the family had agreed not to look at flowed straight to her, and she spoke it, because to her it was simply true and simply visible. Therefore, she became the one who was always starting something, when all she had really done was see through a window the rest of the family had already closed. Now, the shadow does not land the same way on every open window. Over years of these family patterns, it tends to take one of 3 shapes. As we go through them, notice which one feels like it is describing you. Type 1 is the truth teller. This is Renata, the one who names the unspoken thing out loud and gets punished for the accuracy, not the volume. The truth teller is dangerous to the family because they keep saying the quiet part, and every time they do, the whole careful arrangement wobbles. Type 2 is the sponge. The sponge never says anything. The sponge just absorbs. They soak up the household's unspoken tension, the low background dread nobody names, and they carry it in their own body as anxiety they assume is theirs. It can take the sponge 30 years to realize that the fear they have lived with since childhood was never actually theirs to begin with. They were storing it for everyone else. Type 3 is the fixer. The fixer gets recruited early into work no child should do. They manage a parent's moods. They mediate the fights. They become, far too young, the emotional adult in the room, and they mistake that constant vigilance for love. The fixer grows up believing that being needed and being safe are the same thing. Truth teller, sponge, fixer. Same open window, 3 different ways the shadow moves through it. If one of those landed a little too hard, tell me in the comments which one you are. Truth teller, sponge, or fixer. I read them, and the answers are usually the most honest part of the whole channel. There is a part of all this almost nobody talks about, because if the story stopped at "you were the perceptive one," it would be flattering, and it would also be a lie by omission. There is a cost to seeing the shadow first, and it does not go away when you grow up and move out. There are 3 ways it follows you. The first danger is that the scanning never turns off. A child develops shadow detection because it was survival equipment in a house where the real threat was never named. But survival equipment does not come with an off switch. So the adult keeps scanning, keeps reading the room, keeps looking for the hidden problem, even when they are finally sitting in a room with people who love them and mean them no harm. They go looking for the shadow in safe places, and if you look hard enough, you will always find something. The second danger is quieter and worse. When a child's accurate perceptions get denied over and over, when they say, "Something is wrong here," and the whole family answers, "No, there isn't, you're imagining it," the child does not just learn to distrust the family, they learn to distrust themselves. And that distrust does not stay tidy. It spreads to the good instincts too. So the adult who once saw everything clearly now second-guesses even their most reliable reads, because the family trained them to believe their own eyes lie. The third danger is the deepest. It is when the role stops being something the person does and becomes the only self they have. "I am the one who sees the truth" turns from a description into an identity. And once that happens, ordinary life starts to feel unbearable. A calm relationship feels boring. A peaceful room feels suspicious. Because if seeing the hidden darkness is who you are, then a world with no hidden darkness in it leaves you with no self at all. Renata felt all 3. Years later, sitting across from someone kind, someone who had given her no reason to doubt them, she caught herself running the old scan, watching his hands, reading the pause before he answered a question, waiting for the drink that in his house was just a drink. The window that had let her see her father clearly at 7 would not let her see this man simply at 34. That is the paradox of premature sight, still collecting its bill. So what do you actually do with a window that will not close on command? You do not force it shut. A person cannot unsee. What you can do is learn to aim it. There is a process for that, and it has 3 steps. It has a name too, the recalibration process. Step 1 is separation. Before you act on a feeling, you ask one question. Is this mine, or was this routed through me? The sponge especially needs this one. That flood of dread when a friend goes quiet. That is not always information about the friend. Sometimes it is a 30-year-old signal from a house you no longer live in. Naming which one it is takes the charge out of it. Step 2 is verification. The old system fired on reflex, because in childhood there was no time to check. As an adult, there is time. So when the shadow red fires, you hold it and you look for actual evidence before you treat it as fact. Not, I feel like he is hiding something, but what did I actually see? A feeling is a lead worth checking, never a verdict on its own. And if you try one thing from this whole video this week, try this one. The next time the scan fires on someone who has not earned your suspicion, write down what you felt, and then write down, separately, what you literally observed. Watch how often the gap between those two columns is the whole problem. Step 3 is choice. Your perceptiveness is not a public utility. You do not owe every room a reading, so you choose, deliberately, who gets this part of you. You offer it to the people who can actually receive it, and you stop leaking it onto everyone else by default. That is the whole discipline, aiming what used to just spray. To see what this looks like in a life, look at two people who both had the open window and went opposite ways with it. The first is Renata. In the version of her story where nothing changes, she never runs the recalibration. She keeps the scan running full time. She burns through the kind partner, then the next one, always certain she has caught the hidden thing, never quite noticing that the hidden thing keeps turning out to be a ghost from a house that no longer exists. She stays right, and she stays alone. And being right about the shadow turns out to be a cold thing to build a life around. The second person actually lived. His name was Carl Jung, and long before he was the man on the book covers, he was a small boy in a Swiss parsonage with an open window of his own. Jung wrote about it plainly in his memoir. He described dim intimations of trouble in his parents' marriage that hovered around him before he had any words for them. When he was 3, his mother was hospitalized for several months, a separation he connected directly to the difficulty in the marriage, and it marked him so deeply that for years afterward he felt a stab of mistrust whenever he heard the word love. He sensed things about his mother that a child should not have to carry. He became convinced she had 2 personalities, one warm and ordinary, and another that would surface without warning and say things that struck, in his words, to the core of his being. He was reading a psyche in the next room years before he could name what he was doing. Nobody told him he was gifted for it. What he got was a childhood of unease. But he did the thing Renata could not. He turned that open window into his life's work. And this is the part worth slowing down for. Because Jung did not build his psychology from a comfortable distance. He built it from inside the exact wound we are describing. He wrote that in order to survive the conflict between his parents, he fell into what he called the role of the superior arbitrator, the one who, in his words, willy-nilly had to judge his parents. And he was honest about the price. He wrote that it caused a certain inflatedness in him, that his self-assurance was both increased and undermined at the same time. That is a man describing the fixer and the truth-teller in the same breath, decades before anyone had those words. He was the child who saw too much, who got handed a job no child should hold, and who paid for it in a divided sense of self. Therefore, when Jung tells us that we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, he is speaking from inside that parsonage, as the boy who actually lived it. He is the proof that the open window does not have to stay a wound. It can become the exact instrument you use to understand everyone else who was ever handed the same role. So, the window can become an instrument. The question is where you point it and at whom. because the recalibration process tells you how to aim, but it does not tell you who is safe to aim at. There are 3 kinds of people who can actually receive this part of you. The first are the people who do not need their shadow managed. You will know them by a simple test. When something is a little off with them, they can say so themselves. You do not have to carry it for them, because they carry it for themselves. Around these people, your scanner can finally rest, because there is nothing hidden for it to hunt. The second are the people who can hear, "I noticed something," without treating it as an attack. In your family, that sentence got you punished. With the right person, that same sentence is just information they can use. Test it small. Offer one honest observation and watch what they do with it. Punishment means keep the window mostly closed. Curiosity means you are safe to open it further. The third are the people who show you their own shadow sometimes too. Because a relationship where only one person sees clearly is just the old family in new clothes, with you back in the role. You are looking for people who will occasionally say the quiet part first, so the seeing goes both ways. Day to day it runs like this. When you meet someone new, you keep the window at a normal setting, not sealed, not wide open. You offer one small true thing. You watch what comes back, and you let their response, not your childhood reflex, decide how far the window opens from there. That is recalibration in real time. Zoom out, and the whole path moves through 4 stages. You can locate yourself on it. The first stage is recognition. This is the moment, maybe this video, when a person realizes the role was handed to them rather than earned, and that they were only ever the container the family used to hold what it could not. Nothing changes yet, but the ground shifts. The second stage is naming. This is where the vague ache becomes specific language. I was the truth teller. That dread was never mine. As Jung understood, the thing that stays unconscious runs your life as fate. The thing you can name, you can finally start to steer. The third stage is calibration. This is the daily work of the process, separating what is yours, verifying before reacting, aiming instead of leaking. It is undramatic, 100 small corrections, and it is where the real change actually lives. The fourth stage is choice. This is where the window stops being something that happened to you and becomes something you operate. You decide when it opens. You decide who it opens for. The same perception that once ran you, you now run. Before we go on, tell me where you are on that staircase right now. Recognition, naming, calibration, or choice. Naming it in the comments is its own small version of stage 2, and it tends to help more than people expect. A warning, because this work has its own failure modes, and the sharpest people fall into them most. The first is turning the process into permanent surveillance. Recalibration is supposed to help you rest around safe people. If instead it becomes a more sophisticated way to keep scanning everyone forever, you have just upgraded the cage. The goal is to need the scanning less and less, until safe rooms finally feel safe. The second is the one to watch most carefully. It is using "I can see your shadow" as a weapon. Once a person learns to read hidden dynamics, it is tempting to wield that reading to feel superior, to win arguments, to diagnose everyone who has not done the work. That has nothing to do with insight. It is the old family cruelty wearing the mask of wisdom. Seeing someone clearly is a responsibility you carry quietly, and the moment it becomes a way to feel superior, it has curdled into the very thing that was once done to you. The third is regression under stress. When life gets hard, the old reflex comes roaring back, and the calibrated adult snaps into the 7-year-old scanner without noticing. This is normal. It does not mean you have slid back to the beginning. It just means the stress found the old groove. You notice, and you climb back out. The fourth is the subtlest. It is rebuilding the martyr. It is deciding that you are the only truly conscious one, the lone healthy person in a world of sleepwalkers. That feels like growth. It is actually just the scapegoat role flipped inside out, still defining yourself against everyone else, still standing outside the circle. The way out is not to become the family's judge. It is to stop needing the role at all. Step all the way back, and you find that families did not invent this. They inherited it. The word scapegoat comes from an ancient ritual. Jung himself pointed to it in the 10th volume of his collected works, when he described the Old Testament practice of loading a community's evil onto a goat and driving it out into the wilderness so the people could feel clean. Look at what that ritual actually does. The community has darkness in it. Naming that darkness, owning it, would be unbearable. So they gather it up, place it on one creature that never generated it, and send that creature away. And in the sending away, they get to believe the darkness left with it. That is the family scapegoat exactly. One person made to carry what belongs to everyone, then pushed out so the rest can feel clean. The only thing that has changed in 3,000 years is that the goat is now a child, and the wilderness is now silence at holidays, or a name that stops getting mentioned, or a chair that stays empty. And notice how alive this still is. Family estrangement, going no contact, whole branches of a family that no longer speak. We treat it as a modern crisis. It is the oldest ritual we have, still running, still doing the same job. Someone gets loaded up. Someone gets walked out to the edge of the camp. So let us go back to Renata one last time. In the version where the story turns, she does the unglamorous work. She learns to ask whether the dread is hers. She learns to check before she convicts. She learns that being right about the shadow was never going to keep her warm. And slowly, the scanner she was handed at 7 becomes a tool she picks up and puts down, instead of a siren she cannot silence. She does not lose the sight. That was never the goal. She stops being run by it. The permeability window is still open, but now she is the one standing at it. And here is where I want to talk to you directly, because if you have made it this far, this was probably never just about Renata. You were not chosen because you were broken. You were not even chosen, really, because you were sensitive. You were chosen because your window had not closed yet when the family needed somewhere to put what it could not face. It is not a defect or a curse. It is an inheritance, and what you do with it now is the only part that was ever actually yours. The family handed you the darkness because it could not bear to make it conscious. That was their tragedy. You get to do the thing they could not. You get to make it conscious, and the moment you do, that fate stops running you from the dark. It turns into something you can finally work with. You saw the shadow first because you were standing at the one window that was open. Nothing was ever wrong with you. The only question left is who gets to decide what you do with the seeing now. And for the first time in your life, the answer is you. So tell me, of the three, which one were you? The truth teller who said it out loud, the sponge who carried what was never yours, or the fixer who grew up too fast? Put it in the comments. Someone who reads it is going to realize they were not the only one in that chair. If this gave you language for something you have carried a long time, subscribe and stay with us. This is the work we do here every week, one difficult idea at a time. And next, if you want to understand the other side of this story, watch the one on the golden child, the sibling who got the opposite role, and the strange, specific price they paid for being the favorite. Thank you for watching. See you in the next dimension. Empaths aren't broken. They're alchemists in progress. The Alchemist's Path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com.